normal, I think.
Yeah.
It was pretty normal. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, grew up East London with yourself.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? In what we used to call the slums, slums of East London. Yeah, I suppose a pretty normal upbringing. Obviously, I had a bit going on with mum. As you know, I don't never hide the fact she was a alcoholic, functioning alcoholic. So I grew up with nan and granddad, bouncing back and forward with mum and stuff like that. But I had normal school friends when the school was normal. Do you know what I mean? There weren't anything too out of the ordinary from what people, unless people knew me and what was going on in the background. It was all pretty normal.
Well, what first led you into using drugs then?
Oh, do you know what? It was sort of a bit of a bolt out of the blue for me. I'd always been sort of, up until sort of the age of 19, I was always anti-smoking because my mum smoked, my uncle smoked, never liked smoking. Started drinking from quite a young age, as you do you know what I mean? Going to parties, I remember your 18th, you know, flipping, getting absolutely steamed on Alizé and whatever else it was we could get our hands on at the time, you know, for all these little mini gangsters in the circle, you know how it is. And yeah, I'd done it, smoked a bit of skunk and a bit of weed, as you all do when you're at school, the peer pressure of other people, you've got to try it. And to be fair, that for me, I just done to fit in. Yeah. To be fair, like most things, I'll be honest with you, like most things for me as a kid, always trying to fit in with other people, fit in with crowds, like a bit of a social chameleon. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So never was a problem for me. But if someone said to me, we've got some weed, do you want to get high? Yeah. Let's go. Do you know what I mean? As much as I'd take it and I'd probably throw up and be sick, I'd still do it because everyone else was doing it. I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be like the black sheep and not partake because I'm worried about what people might think of me. Do you know what I mean? Look at this loser, this saddo. He don't want to do the gear or whatever it was. Do you know what I mean? So that was like the early years. And I don't think I picked up, when was it? I remember exactly, my first bit I ever done was 2005.
And is this cocaine?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I was down the pub, I was with my normal crowd, but then we'd met another guy and he'd done a bit of thing, do you know what I mean? And he said, oh, do you want to try a bit of this? Once I'd had a beer and that was in me, I'm game for anything then, do you know what I mean, at that point. But it never took off from there. You know, I'd done it a few times over the space of about 6 months. And we ended up in a place called Warehouse a couple of times over in Enfield. And that was the time I first ever pulled what I call an all-nighter, where we'd been partying till 4 or 5 in the morning, getting on, you know, I had a couple of pills, sniffed a few lines, went to work the next day, slept for about 24 hours afterwards. That was it. Weren't a problem. I don't think I then touched it again for another 2 years.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? So, but when I took it at that first time, it done something for me that nothing else could.
Yeah.
And it gave me like a confidence boost, because I always struggled with sort of confidence growing up. As I said, trying to be a social comedian, fit in. I was never comfortable in my own skin, like, do you know what I mean? So that gave me that little bit of what everyone else calls Dutch courage, I suppose.
Yeah.
To go out and be normal around people. But yeah, it sort of kicked off again back end of 2007, and I picked up half a gram, went to a place in Chelmsford. It was a strip bar or something like that, I think it was. It was like some mad flipping escapade we went on. And that really is my first memory of where it started, because I was proper excited about picking this half a gram up in this wrap. And I remember sitting in my van the night before we went out, and I'm sitting there looking at it thinking, yeah, I can't wait to do you tomorrow. Just, like, really excited over this, butterflies in my stomach over this wrap. I'm thinking, because I knew where it was going to take me. Do you know what I mean? I knew as soon as I'd done it where it was going to take me, and I was excited for that, because I've never had that sort of high before.
Yeah.
Sad, some might say, but that was just my story of it. Do you know what I mean? And it was from there that it started.
Yeah.
The main frame of it started from there. Do you know what I mean? And it for me, you know, you hear a lot of addicts, they'll talk about progression of your illness, which is how fast or slow that you get deep into it. So I think it was February 08, I split up with my ex.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I suppose I wasn't overly bothered because I was always out partying, and for me it was like a free ticket. I was back at my nan's, everything seemed sweet, but there was a lot of trauma behind that split up, which I didn't realise at the time, because I'd found out that infidelity had been going on behind my back, but the drugs blotted all that out. It's great blotting it out, but at the same time, it quickly led me down a really slippery road, which I didn't see coming. Do you know what I mean? It was like a bolt out of the blue. So from 2008 February, by 2010, and that seems like a big jump, you're talking partying, it started off bit by bit. I'd pick up a bit on a Friday, that'd last me the Friday and Saturday. The following week I'll pick up a bit Friday, then Saturday. And then I started edging into doing it in the week. And that's when I started to isolate. But again, I didn't know what isolate was back then. Do you know what I mean? I'd be playing Call of Duty on the computer, I'd pick up 6 beers, be on my headset, sniffing gear. That's when it started to become a problem. So from 2007 to 2010, that was my life. But bit by bit, it started getting more and more and more and more. And without realising it, by 2010, I was bankrupt. Wow. I'd had to declare bankruptcy. Do you know, it got to the point where I was selling TVs, I was selling my stereo system to my nan who lived in the same house. Like craziness, do you know what I mean? Just to make... She was oblivious, bless her heart. Do you know what I mean? We're in the same house and she didn't have a clue what was going on. Obviously, in the end, it gets to a point when you've got people knocking on your door asking where your grandson is. Then she realises there's a problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So very quickly, it went from sort of being enjoyable to being a party for one with me mate in my pocket.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I couldn't operate outside of that in the end.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? And it was horrible, because it's not just like get on it. Some people can get on it and go to sleep.
Yeah.
For me, that weren't my story. I'd get on it 6 o'clock one night. I'd go the whole way through the night. Obviously, I still had work at the time. I'd then go to work while off me nut. Do you know what I mean? So driving, dangerous, all this sort of stuff. Picking up, like, all around these areas where it was, you know, Hornchurch, amongst others, picking up gear throughout the day just to keep me going. So I was just sniffing to stay awake, to work, to earn money, to sniff again. Do you know what I mean? So it was like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And all the while, I'm trying to play all these different characters in my life. So this was before I had kids.
Yeah.
Of 2009 was when Ruby came along. But prior to that, I'm playing all these different characters. So I'm Steve the Plasterer. Do you know what I mean? I'm Steve to me normal mates who I normally see. They've got no idea of what's going on, like yourself, do you know what I mean? You didn't probably have a clue until
no clue whatsoever.
Way down the line.
Wow.
And I suppose I didn't want to be judged. And equally, I didn't even know I had a problem. For me, I was enjoying myself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Them nights sitting in, as I say at the time, didn't have kids. I'm sitting in, and I suppose quite quickly I realised in my own head, I'm thinking, it's a bit of a problem here.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say, like, you never had an idea. You never had an inkling about it.
I had no clue whatsoever.
I mean, I go to pubs and stuff. And may I just say, by the way, we're in a pub setting right now. And I just want to say, for anyone who's listening or anyone who's watching, like, big up to you for coming into a pub environment. I found it a little bit like, I don't want it to seem, what's the word? Insensitive, to do that, but I just want to say, like, thanks for coming here. I really appreciate it. I digress there, but going off the back of going in pubs and stuff, I always feel like I can tell if someone is on it, you know, like almost like a gear dart, like you'd call it, so to speak.
Swinging jaw.
Yeah.
Unusual sort of twitchy behaviour.
That don't leave you alone, or, it's just, wow, like you're clucking and, whatever.
Yeah.
So I had
no
idea.
Yeah, and we spoke
We spoke
quite
with
often.
regular.
Or
Well, it reduced, didn't it? As
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
because the more I isolated, the more I pulled away from what I call normality.
Yeah.
Do you know, the life of normal living. Now, bear in mind, up to that point in 2008 when we split up, I mean, it was, don't get me wrong, I had some bloody good times. I can't sit here and
Yeah.
bullshit, you know what I mean? I had some really good times out pulling birds and, I say pulling birds, I didn't pull that many, but, you know, you go out and you've got the old charge on, you know what I mean? I could look at him and think, yeah, you know, you're looking good tonight, son, and all that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? And I felt good, but as I said, it's just my head bullshit me in the end.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because, as I said, it went from very quickly me going out and enjoying myself to sitting in, to staring out a window at 2 o'clock in the morning. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could sit here for a week and try and explain like that drug-induced, what I realise now was like a kind of psychosis. Some people get it worse than others.
Yeah.
But, you know, from creeping around the house at 2, 3 in the morning, sneaking out to go to Stratford, to go, like, putting myself in dangerous situations with, like, big highballing drug dealers going into their flat, and there's, like, all these different random people sitting there. I've got blood coming out my nose where I've been sniffing for 24 to 48 hours, sneaking in and out the house and then don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, it was the closest, I think, to hell that I think I'll ever get. Do you know what I mean? It just wasn't a nice place. You know, your head's constantly racing. I'm sitting there, I'm stepping over certain floorboards in the room because the noises now, where I've had no sleep, I've had no food, I've been up for so long, everything just seems magnified. Emotions feel magnified. You know, sounds feel magnified. Everything, even certain lighting. Do you know what I mean? It was horrible, even down to cupping my hand over a light switch and pushing it as slow as I could, to standing completely still in one space for more than 2 hours, thinking that someone can hear me moving about. You know, that's the psychosis
Wow.
side of it. So, yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was really horrible. Do you know what I mean? And then obviously coming off the back of that, I'm then trying to be normal in front of other people so that they don't know that there's a problem. Steve, you come, no, I ain't really got the money. Where's all your money going? You're working sort of. Bear in mind, I'm working every day as well. It was very rare that I ever had a day off.
Yeah.
Because I had to pay for this somehow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was never I'm going to lie here. I don't want to lie. I did stoop to really, really, really low lows. And, you know, all this stuff that I'm saying, I had to come to terms with myself, and I know I had to be honest with myself and the program I did with someone else. I say I didn't resort to stealing, I did. And it was off my own name, which is something I'm not proud of. But again, I know there's probably people out there who can relate to what I'm saying, and you do feel shameful. It's the worst, for me, it was one of the worst things that I ever done. But that's the levels it takes you. I was never someone who went on robbery sprees. You get some people who will go out and do robberies, and some people kill on that stuff. Do you know what I mean? That was never me. But yeah, I went to different lows. I was a person that I didn't recognise, other people didn't recognise. Do you know what I mean? I won't say what I would say violent. I was never a violent person, but very manipulative, very deceiving, very conniving. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was a victim in all this. I was Steve the victim. Do you know what I mean? I take drugs because my mum weren't well and my dad died when I was 2 and I had a rough upbringing.
Yeah.
You know, it was all the excuses I used to justify my using in the end.
Yeah. You said about your gran and situations like that. I was going to ask you, how did it affect relationships, friends, family?
Massively.
Yeah.
Massively. I mean, the amount of bridges I sort of severed, which, you know, God willing, I've managed to rebuild most of them. But I was still in active using when my nan died. And she was like, as I said, with mum being the way she was, her and granddad brought me up, brought me into their home. You remember that,
yeah,
granddad, you know what I mean? They was a salt of the earth. And they done the best that they could.
Yeah.
And even to her dying breath, she done the best she could for me. And I never got the chance to say sorry to her.
Yeah.
which was difficult. I never got a chance to say sorry in person, but I've said it in prayer and said sorry to her, you know, sort of on my hands and knees. Hopefully some way she could hear.
Well, you're doing the right thing now.
Yeah.
So her efforts
Weren't in vain.
Yeah, exactly. And they were pushed into the right ways, you know what I mean? And you're doing it now. And, you know, if there is a place where they go and they look down, I believe there is, you know, and, you know, you can get messages and whatnot. I won't go into too spooky.
Yeah, won't get too deep into that.
I'm just saying, like, you know, she probably knows.
Yeah, 100%. But as I said, that would have been that was probably the lowest point for me. And you know, my missus is going to see this podcast. I don't know if I've ever told her that side of the story. Part of me is still ashamed to tell certain parts of what I do. But in order for me to be able to try and pass a message of hope to others, because they're the sort of things that keep you locked in addiction. They're the sort of secrets that you harbour. You know, obviously doing the recovery program, which I done in the 12-step program, it was, you learn a lot about yourself, and you can either embrace it and you can be completely vulnerable, you know, because ego's got a lot of part to play in this. You know, I can't tell anyone that because I'm really ashamed of that, and I don't want people to think this of me and to think that of me. So obviously going into the recovery program, I had to strip all that. I had to strip back down to the bare innocent me. Do you know what I mean? You feel like a child again. Yeah. You're basically starting from the beginning. You know, getting out all the crap that you've done, all the horrible things, the nasty things, the embarrassing things, the shameful things. That it all had to come out in order for me to be able to put it in the past and start afresh. Do you know what I mean? You close one door, you're opening a new door. Yeah. And it's an everyday reprieve. It's not something that, you know, it never goes away. I'm never cured from this stuff. It's, you know, I have to keep on top of it on a daily basis.
So what was the moment then, I suppose, like the darkest moment out of all that, where Mr. Hyde takes over, but, you know, you're Dr. Jekyll, so to speak, trying to get back to normality? Like, what was it, and when did you know, two questions in one really, but when did you first go, nah, I need to sort it out now?